Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Tawab Nazari, and I'm an intern with the Learn Commission here at ASUCI. That stands for Legal Education and Resource Network, and I'm here with Amy today.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amy. I'm a third year. I'm double majoring in criminology and urban studies, and I'm also an intern at the Legal Education and Resource Network Commission.
Yeah. And we're going to be interviewing a guest speaker today. Estuardo, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. My name is Estuardo Ponciano. I use the pronouns he, him, and él. And I am the Executive Director of Community Programs at UC Irvine School of Law. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great. So, what the Legal Education Commission is doing right now is we're making a series of videos to help better prepare our undergraduate students at UCI for a career in law potentially and attending law school. So, we have a list of questions here that we got by asking the student body through a survey. We got over 70 responses, and we've compiled them to get basically the most frequently asked questions, and we're going to be asking Estuardo for his take on them and to help illuminate the process. So starting off with the first one, pretty basic. It is, how long is law school?
So the Juris Doctor is a 3-year graduate degree. There are some schools that offer part-time programs, and then that would might be 4 years, sometimes a little longer than that. But generally, most JD programs, including UCI laws, are 3-year full-time.
Thank you.
The next question is, does your major matter in undergrad?
Your major does not matter for law school. Law school does not have any prerequisites in terms of classes or majors. So people from any major are welcome to apply to law school and do well in law school. We do encourage skill sets that you would want to develop, like critical thinking, analytical writing, research, but certainly those can happen throughout any major.
Great. And I know that's really like a question a lot of people have these days. I'm a political science major. At one point, I did think there was like a certain like path, like a pre-law major, but that's apparently like a myth. So you can go with pretty much whatever major you want to. Thank you. How important is your college GPA in the admissions process?
So you want to think about your GPA in terms of what it represents. The law schools are trying to answer two questions when they look at your applications. They're trying to understand how academically prepared you are so that you can do well in law school, so you can succeed. And they also want to see if you are going to be a good fit for their student body, for the community at the law school. And so your GPA is being looked at in that context. It's they're trying to assess whether you are academically prepared to succeed. And they also recognize that that is not always a perfect indicator. There's not a perfect correlation between GPA and law school academic success, but they're taking their best to guess, right? And obviously, one of the few metrics they can look at is a GPA.
Thank you. The next question is, what is the LSAT and what is its role in admissions?
So good question. The LSAT stands for the Law School Admission Test. And so this is a test that is required by ABA law schools, including UCI, to as part of the application process. There generally is not a minimum LSAT score that you need to have, but obviously doing the better you do on the test, the better it is for your application. The LSAT can be taken multiple times, though we encourage students to prepare well for it and only take it once because you do have to pay to take that test. And the score is good for 5 years. The test is meant to is meant to evaluate the skills that I was talking about earlier. Are you able to problem solve? Are you able to read, interpret, and absorb information that is given to you? Are you able to form an argument? Are you able to analyze facts that are given to you and use them to shape an argument? And these are skills that, as you can imagine, attorneys use every day.
Yeah. And I can even maybe compare it for those of you watching to the pre-meds MCAT, but this is for law school, the LSAT. And I believe, Estuardo, you've actually taken a test yourself at one point, so maybe you can talk more about that at a later point. Yeah. The next question is, what is the general application process to law school?
So the application process to law school is pretty standard across all law schools. You know, you have different components of the application. Everyone is going to require you to have transcripts. You need to have for ABA law schools, that is law schools that are accredited by the American Bar Association. You need to have a bachelor's degree from an accredited institution, and that again can be in any major. You need an LSAT test score. In some instances, law schools are now accepting GRE scores, but that depends on the law school. Not all law schools accept GRE scores. GRE is the general, I forget what the R stands for, but it's basically for grad school generally. So for master's programs and whatnot, you would take the GRE. So some law schools are beginning to accept that instead of the LSAT or alongside it. Besides that, it will vary on the law school. So UCI, for example, we require letters of recommendation. Not all law schools require that. We require a copy of your resume. And we also require personal statements. We really want to hear your story and why you are choosing to come to law school and what you hope to do with that education.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Kind of going off of your answer, it's like the next question is, what is a personal statement and how important it is in your application?
So yes, that's a great question. So your personal statement is going to be how you introduce yourself to the committee. It is a statement of interest, essentially. It's an essay. It should be written in an essay form, and it's meant to convey to the admissions committee that is reviewing your application who you are. A lot of times we don't want to be assessed by just numbers, by our LSAT score or by our GPA. We want the committee to think of it as a whole person, because we are a whole person, right? When I come to law school, I'm bringing my entire self and not just these numbers. And so one of the important ways to do that is by writing a personal statement that talks about my life experiences, professional experiences sometimes, my motivations for coming to law school, what is making me take this step, and what do I hope to accomplish with that, and what attributes am I bringing, what personal experiences do I bring. So the personal statement is your introduction, or your way of introducing yourself to the law school community, to the admissions committee specifically, who are the ones reading your statement.
So it looks just like similar to the undergraduate. It's not just a numbers game. You also have to kind of pull up with your character and your experiences. And that's honestly a really good thing too. So I'm kind of glad that the law school is given an opportunity for us to give these additional things to be considered when applying. So do you need a bachelor's degree? Can you maybe come in with an associate's or?
So pretty much every ABA law school is going to require you to have a bachelor's degree. There might be some minor exceptions. Here in California, the California Bar Association allows people to take the bar exam without having completed an undergrad degree, and consequently allows some law schools to admit people without completing a bachelor's degree. But by and large, you need to have your bachelor's degree. Again, there's usually, if you are not going to do that, then you have to inquire with the law school as to whether you have the work experience or the specific requirements that they have to grant you that exception.
Okay. Yeah, Amy. Sorry.
The next question is, when do or should we apply to law school?
You know what? That is a great question, because but that does not have a specific answer. It really depends on the person. Some students decide to go to law school straight after undergrad, and so they might, apply and be ready to start. If they graduate in May, they might be starting in August or September. Other people take time off because they want to work, they want to get some experience, they're not sure they want to go to law school. And so it really depends on when you're ready. Law schools don't have a preference for when you apply or when you're admitted, and law schools are pretty evenly, the law school population is pretty evenly split between students that come right out of undergrad, and actually they tend to be a little less than the amount of students that take at least a year off. Regardless of when you decide you want to go to law school, your application process should begin about a year in advance. The law schools open their applications in the fall typically, September 1st is usually the day that all of us kind of unlock the gates. And they will be, and so you should be starting your applications around that time, if not getting done with them. And so the different components like the LSAT, for example, getting letters of recommendation, those are the components that take the most time. You should start working on them before that.
Yeah. And I see basically, due to the fact that the LSAT gives you like 5 years to apply it to law school, it's pretty much you have the opportunity to, and maybe sometimes encourage, I don't know, to take a gap. And we actually had an event to learn last night, the Legal Education Resource Network, called A Day in the Law. We had several lawyers come and speak about their various careers, and some even said that they recommend taking a little bit of a gap between undergraduates in law school because they say the law is better in context. So that was a really nice tip. But for those of you who do want to go straight into law school, there's a little thing they say K through JD, which I always thought was kind of funny. The next question is, how much does it cost to go to law school? Maybe do you have any numbers for UCI Law School?
Yes. So law school's not cheap, regardless of where you go. It's not comparable to undergrad tuition. And so a lot of times initially students, or at least, public undergrad tuition. And so students are sometimes a little bit shell shocked when they first see the cost. Our tuition at UCI most recently was around $49,000 a year for in-state residents. And then that of course does not factor in cost of attendance, which includes housing, your food, materials, transportation, things like that. And so that can bring it up anywhere between 65 to 70,000 a year to attend. So we, obviously that would be the sticker price if you were just to come in and write a check. That doesn't account for the possibility of scholarships, of which there are many, and law schools, including UCI, tend to be pretty generous with their scholarship allocation to students. There's also, student loans, there's private scholarships that are coming in from third parties that help you pay for that. And so yes, it is certainly a lot, and it's a decision to not take lightly because you are in a lot of cases incurring debt to do that. But certainly not, it shouldn't be a detraction, because if you really want a law degree, and you want to go to law school, you want to practice law, there are ways to pay for it.
I know there were some mentions of a gap year. Some of the question was like, what is a gap year and what should we do during the gap year?
So a gap year, quite simply, is time off between undergrad and when you start, law school. And obviously we're talking specifically about a 1 year time frame, but really people take more time than that sometimes. And so it really, there isn't a specific preference, especially if you're talking about 1 year. We recognize that time passes very quickly. We also recognize that the application process is time consuming. Studying for the LSAT is time consuming. And so we are not expecting you to have become, in the course of a year, like the CEO of a company, or to have done all these amazing things. We recognize that you might have needed the time to really, hit the books and study hard for the LSAT, or to have worked on your applications and write really thoughtful personal statements. And so we don't have anything that we require you to have done during your personal statement, or even or during your gap year, I'm sorry. But certainly, if you're looking for ideas, if you're looking to how do you fill this time, obviously work experience is going to be helpful if you can get it. If you're not sure about coming to law school, looking into internship opportunities, volunteer opportunities at the courthouse that don't require like your whole day, that you might be able to do it for 2 hours, 3 hours a day, or maybe 5 hours a week or something, and still get some exposure for that. Again, that's not required. We don't require you to have that kind of experience. It's not going to hurt you to not have it. But if you are looking to make that decision and be better informed about it, then certainly that's a good way to go. Otherwise, whatever is helpful to you. Some people want to travel because they won't be able to travel when they're in law school, or want to just, catch up on reading. I mean, there's so many things that you can do during a time, and as long as you're happy with that and you are using your time effectively so that you can apply to law school as, confidently, and knowing that you have put forward the best application, that's the most important thing.
I like that you brought that up because we have other speakers who pretty much do encompass that like broad variety of students who attend law school. We have one who took a gap from his bachelor's to JD, and in that time he actually got a doctorate. So now he's a doctor, or like a doctorate in philosophy, PhD, and he also has a law degree, but he's teaching at UCI. Another woman, she is amazing. I think she did traveling and worked at the State Department for a while before she pursued her law degree. So just giving y'all some context here, you can pretty much do a lot of things in between law school and undergraduate if you choose to do so. Going back a little bit to the affordability of law school, can you tell us a little bit about potential application fees and if there are any waivers offered to students?
Yes, so some law schools will have application fees, some don't. And so it'll just be a matter of checking with the law schools you're interested in. UCI does not have an application fee. It's free to apply to our program. However, there will be fees associated with the application process. And so the Law School Admission Council, they have, there's a fee to take the LSAT. There's a fee, the Law School Admission Council works as, aside from administering the LSAT, they also work as a clearinghouse for law school applications. And so every ABA law school in the country, their application is run through LSAC. And this process is called the Credential Assembly Service. What that means, it is meant to streamline your application process. Let's say that you're applying to multiple law schools. If you're applying, let's say 10 law schools, instead of having to ask your campus to send 10 copies of your transcript to each, or one to each law school, or to ask your recommenders to write, to send out 10 different copies of your letter to the different schools, you can submit one copy to the Law School Admission Council, and then they will distribute this to all the law schools that you apply to. And so this process is called the Credential Assembly Service, and there's a fee for that. And finally, this will come at the later on, but it is something that you have to account for and budget for. Law schools, when you are admitted and you decide to attend a specific law school, most law schools have a seat deposit that you will have to pay. In most cases, the seat deposit is going to be applied towards your tuition for that first semester that you start law school. So it's not like you're just, giving money away, but it is something that will be required. So you have to kind of plan for that. Now, there are fee waivers. The Law School Admission Council offers a fee waiver. Their fee waiver is fairly generous if you qualify for it. It'll allow you to take the LSAT 2 times for free. It'll cover the cost of the Credential Assembly Service. And so you can essentially apply without having to pay these fees. Law schools also frequently give out fee waivers, and they tend to be fairly generous with those. And so you need to email the law school and ask them about a fee waiver, or you can, like I said, UCI, that doesn't apply because our application is free, but those that do have fees, you can ask them for a fee waiver. And some might ask you for supplemental information, but most of, at least the law schools, do not. And so most law schools do not. So it should be fairly easy to get those. The LSAC fee waiver does require supplemental documentation, and which you can submit to them and to get those fee waivers.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The next question is, what can students interested in law school do during college?
That's a great question. So the most important thing you want to focus on is your grades. A lot of times students think that they have to go out and get a lot of work experience and internships. Those are good things. So, and I will talk about them in 1 second. But the most important thing you need to focus on is your grades. Why? Because law school is an academic program, and you need to be able to show that you can handle the rigors of a difficult academic program. And so you want to, and the best way to show that is through your academic work in undergrad. Like I said, the LSAT score will be helpful, but if you have a strong foundation of grades in your undergrad, then that's the most important thing. So first and foremost, grades. Do well. The other things, yes, certainly get involved in things that are interesting to you. Not everything on your resume has to be geared towards law. And so if there is an internship or a job that you think is interesting, go for it, because that will only enhance your resume, and it'll enhance your appeal, so to speak, to the law schools. they will say, oh, this person has some work experience, some real life experience. That's great. Like Tawab mentioned, you want that context. And so when people have that in their applications, that makes them appealing to the law school, because they will understand that there's that what we do in the classroom has practical applications in the real world. And so go for these opportunities, go for things that are interesting to you. Everything will have a way of tying back to law school without you having to worry about making that connection, because really the law touches every aspect of our lives. I can start a small business, there's laws involved in that. I can get married, there's laws involved with that. I can travel, that there's law involved with that. So regardless of what you do, there will be a way for you to connect it to law. And so it is not time wasted. And even if it ends up being a process of elimination, maybe you try something and you find out you don't like it. Well, that's great. Now you're even more convinced that you want to do law. And so go for things that you are interested in. If you're trying to determine whether or not you should go to law school, then getting those opportunities, like I mentioned a moment ago, volunteering at the courthouse, getting an internship in a law office, that will help you see what legal practice looks like and help you determine whether it's the path you want to follow.
Great. And so I like that you mentioned that variability in terms of law, because I want to ask a question about that in a second here. But just going back a little bit to the GPA aspect for the applications, do law schools give you a place or an opportunity to explain whether you had a little bit of a rough patch in school, maybe say during this COVID-19 pandemic? I could see how some people are having a difficult time.
Yes. So in most, you'll have to check with each law school, but in most cases, law schools allow you to submit supplemental information. So aside from what they require, like for example, the personal statements, they allow you to submit optional statements. And the most common will be what are called addenda, academic addenda. And that an addendum is simply a short explanation about something that you think is not clear in your application. Right. And so what you asked about, explaining grades, or maybe if I had a rough patch, or, there was a class that I had to drop because of illness, or, things that are not obvious to the committee, but that have a very valid explanation. This is the time to explain that, and this is the place to do so.
Mm-hmm. And that portion where you mentioned the various types of law, do students in undergraduate, like Amy and I, do we have to know what type of law we're interested in? Or are we going to get opportunities, say, in law school, if we choose to attend, to figure that out?
No, you do not have to know coming in what you want to practice in. A lot of people think they would know when they start, and then they discover, just how specific the law can get and how many things, like I mentioned a moment ago, it touches, right? It touches pretty much every aspect of our lives. And they end up finding out that no, actually they want to try something completely different. And so it is not required for you to know. Certainly once you get into law school, you might start to discover it there. And I say start because a lot of times you don't even fully know what you're going to specialize in until you begin working, until after graduation. There's a lot of orientation, there's a lot of guidance for you. There's a career development office, there's your dean of students. All of them can help you with that process, discovering what it is you are good at, what it is that you enjoy doing as well.
Thank you.
And then another question would be, how do we know if law school is a good fit for us? I know that to go into law school, you need a lot of comprehension skills, problem solving. You're going to be reading a lot. You're going to be researching a lot. If a student doesn't necessarily enjoy those things, should law school be something that they should apply to?
I think in that kind of situation where someone isn't sure that they like the type of work that you do in law school, it's a good idea to come in and visit law schools, obviously when you're able to visit, but come in and sit in on a law school class, talk to law students, talk to a law professor, talk to the admissions office, and try to get in touch with attorneys. Like for example, in Learn, you just had attorneys come in last night. I think that's a great opportunity for students to talk to someone that does this kind of work and see if it's a good fit for them. Also keep it in mind that there are different types of law practice, right? Some people tell me, oh, I don't think I want to go to law school because I don't like speaking in front of people. Well, not every attorney goes to court every day or ever. Some attorneys are transactional and all they do is work in an office and write. On the other hand, there's people that really love that and love that kind of almost performance aspect of it, right? And don't really care about the writing; they just want to be in front of the courtroom. And so it really, some people go into business because they're going to be the in-house counsel for a company. Other people are using their law degree as writers because you become a very good writer as a result of law school. So there's a lot of different things people can do with a law degree, but certainly you want to become acquainted with what those things are, and see if any of those are interesting to you. If there are aspects of it that you think are interesting, but perhaps there's another route, maybe someone, for example, you mentioned being from the criminology major, and it might be that you're really interested in doing research, and that is what drives you. Some people do that in law school with a law degree. Some people become academic faculty, and they teach and they do research and they write. But it might be that you, instead of doing pure law school, you might want to do a PhD in criminology, right? And so there's a lot of different areas that you can kind of still be law adjacent without having to go to law school, and it'll just require some effort on yourself, because really only you can answer that, right? And but doing your research, talking to people that do different types of things, and even finding people that do what you think would be a cool job. Like, just think like, wow, if I could do anything, that person has a job that I think is amazing and I would love to do that. Try to reach out, try to talk to them. People usually are very happy to talk about themselves and about their work, so if you do that, you not every single person might email you back or call you back, but someone will, and you can start from there.
Certainly, and that's why I like that you're talking about the fact that it's such a flexible degree, the JD. Um, so another question we have here is, how can we stand out to admissions committees when compared to many other students, especially in competitive positions? Do you have any recommended opportunities we should try to make sure we try to get done if we're going for, say, very competitive schools?
Yes, so I think it's important to keep in mind that it is less about about comparing yourself to other applicants, because for two reasons. One is you just don't know what other applicants have done. You don't know what their lives have been like. You don't know what their grades are. So don't focus on others, right? Don't focus on like, how am I in relation to everyone else? Because you have no idea what everyone else looks like. So focus on yourself. What is the best version of myself that I can present? Am I doing as well as I can in school? Am I studying for the LSAT when it comes time to study for it? And am I being thoughtful in what I am presenting in my personal statements? Your personal statements are about you. And so you might think, our first, response might be like, oh, it'll be easy. I can write it over a weekend because it's about me. But the reality is, you have to keep in mind, what is the purpose of this statement, right? It's deceptively simple, because we think, oh, it's about me, I can write whatever I want. But the reality is, you want to keep focused on what the purpose of that statement is. It's a persuasive piece of writing. You're trying to convince or show to the committee that you are prepared to start law school, that you have thought about the decision, and that you know yourself, you know why you're coming and what you want to do. Even if it's not a perfect, like, when I say, what you want to do, it doesn't mean that you have to have your career lined up and say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go into this type of area, but rather you understand what you want to be in law school and the reasons you have for it. Even if it's a very general, like, I want to go to law school because I want to be a lawyer, because I want to, fight for the little guy. I want to, be an agent for social change, whatever my goals are, right? And then that's it, right? And then I may not know the rest because I'm not there yet, but at least I understand my goal, my current goals, my current mindset. Because if you can do that, that shows the committee that you're someone that is going to add to the discussion and add to their community.
And going back, thank you, by the way. And going back a little bit to the part about being like fit for law school, there's a general idea out there, I guess, that lawyers have to be good at debating and arguing. Do you think that that's the case? Do we need to be good at that kind of stuff if we're trying to apply?
I think what we need is for attorneys to know how to form a good argument. It's not necessary that you have to be good at debating or good at arguing. Like I said, a lot of our attorneys don't ever step into the courtroom. That's not what they do. But they need to be able to write clearly. They need to be thoughtful, and they need to be able to look at both sides of an argument. Because in order to be effective as an advocate, in order to create an effective argument, you need to be able to understand the other side's perspective so that you can answer those questions and you can answer for them. And so it requires thoughtfulness. It doesn't require, not everyone is going to want, like I said, want to be in the courtroom and arguing or presenting before the court. But you need to be able to write a good argument and understand and be thoughtful about them and be creative in how you interpret the law so that you can push your side forward.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is, can law be considered a stable career to invest in?
I think, yes, it can be. I think it really requires you to be thoughtful about what you want to do and to be realistic in your expectations. I think looking at it as an investment, is it an investment in your education? Is it an investment in your empowerment? Is it an investment in your ability to advocate for yourself and to push your career forward? And the answer is yes to those. On the other hand, I think if you are looking at it as a financial investment, then I think you need to think about, is this something that I want to do regardless of the financial return? Because there might be other ways for someone to make more money. And if you can think of other ways, then maybe that is what you should be doing instead. That might be easier or more enjoyable for you. I don't think it's a good idea to bet on the idea that, oh, if I go to law school, then automatically that means I'm going to have this really large paycheck at the end of that. Because that's not always the case, right? Like some firms pay very well, but some firms, pay a little bit more realistically. And some jobs, like government jobs, nonprofit jobs, do not pay well, right? You're not going to get rich in those positions. So it really depends on what you want to do. So for example, if my dream is to be a social justice attorney and go work for a nonprofit, I kind of have to go in understanding that I'm not going to get rich doing that, at least not that by itself, right? Because those jobs generally are not going to pay these very large salaries. Even if I do want to be a private practice attorney, I also have to understand that there's a lot of work that goes into landing those type of positions. You usually have to be amongst the very best in your class in terms of grades when you're in law school, because there's, those are like the cream of the crop in terms of the availability of those jobs, and so they're very competitive to get. Not impossible, but competitive. And even when you get there, they're paying you a large salary for a reason. Are you willing to put in the sweat that they require? Are you willing to come in at 7 a.m., go home at 9 p.m., Monday through Saturday? But yes, you're earning like that very big check, right? So those are questions that I think are good. You're certainly very valid questions, and I think we all need to ask ourselves those and really answer honestly, because that is ultimately, you're the one that's going to put in the work. And if there's other things that you think, oh, maybe I should try business for a while, that's perfectly fine. If you decide after 2 years, 5 years that wasn't for you and you really do want to come to law school, we'll still be there, right? Like law school's not going away. So if someone's not sure about the investment, then certainly it's worth taking the time to figure out whether it is for you or not. Because like I said, the answer is very personal. Some people will say, oh, even though I have all these student loans, I'm very happy doing the job work that I do. So of course. And other people might have gotten out with like $10,000 in loans, but they hate their job. And so even that investment they feel was not worth it, right? So it's very subjective.
I appreciate that you're reminding students to be realistic in their goals, because I do remember a time when I was doing some more research into law school, and I read somewhere that the salary would eventually be like sort of bimodal distribution. And I think you kind of did paint a really good picture of that you're not exactly going to be expecting a certain outcome, but depending on what you do, you could have a general idea of what you're heading for. And heading up to our last question, do you have any personal tips and stories to share from your experience?
Yeah, so I always like to joke. I jokingly tell students to not do things the way I did them when I applied to law school. I was a first gen college student, law student, and I was so used to. I think a lot of times you tend to because you've had to a lot of in a lot of circumstances kind of advocate for yourself and figure things out for yourself because you don't have even if you have a lot of family support and encouragement, they may just not know how to guide you, right? And so a lot of times you kind of end up being the one that has to find information for yourself and do everything yourself. And that's very helpful to a point, right? It has gotten you to where you are, and that's a good thing. But at a certain point, we have to realize that we don't have all the answers ourselves. And that if we expect to get through life, to get through law school, or even college for that matter, um, doing everything ourselves, we're just making it very hard or much harder than it has to be because there are other people out there who have gone through the same path. There are people that are very happy to lend us a hand or to kind of pull us up, but we need to reach out. Like no one is going to kind of guess as I'm walking down, Ring Road. No one's going to just randomly pull me aside and say, "Hey, let me help you with your dreams," right? Like that's just not going to happen. Like I need to go find those resources. But if you do, you will find help. And so ask questions, ask for help, talk to professors, talk to mentors, to administrators, and if one person doesn't seems too busy or doesn't isn't able to help you, or there isn't like a connection, that's okay. That doesn't mean that there aren't any people. That just means that one didn't work. Find someone else, because there are people, eventually you will find people that want to help you and that are able to help you, even if it's just with advice and or pointing you in the right direction to someone else or to another office. But ask questions, ask for help, because when you get to law school, you definitely need to do that. So get used to doing that now. If I had learned that a lot earlier, I probably would have been a much better law student. I would have done much better in my classes because I would have gotten help when I needed it.
Thank you so much. And you know what? I think it's kind of a full circle moment here, coming as you are a first generation student, and I am as well. So you're helping spread out this information for so many students here at UCI, and we all really appreciate it. So thank you so much. And
You're
yeah,
very welcome.
Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you. You're very welcome. I'm happy to. And I'm at the law school and we're on campus. So if there's any questions, please reach out to me.
great. Thank you everybody for watching.